Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. Here with Flexa, we are talking about the paternity gap and why working dads need better options. My name is Richard Odufasan. I am an engagement and inclusion manager at Balfour Beatty, and I am joined by three amazing working dads. We're just going to have a chat between ourselves. I know you're all here to watch, but quite frankly, it's just a group of friends, a group of dads talking about the realities of what it's like trying to balance work and parenthood. With me today, I have got Alex Gator, Greg Phillips, and Simon Defoe. Thank you all for joining me. So I like to start with a little bit of a who's who and what do you do. So if you wouldn't mind telling us who you are, what you do, and let's go with a favorite memory of being a working dad. I'm going to give you a bit of time, so I'll introduce myself and tell you mine, and then I'll go across to you. So I'm Richard, like I said, I work at Balfour Beatty. One of my favorite memories of being a working dad, I just moved to Balfour's, and I had signed up way before I joined for the dad strike, and it was a great opportunity for me and my eldest to go spend the day together, especially because we'd just I think we were maybe a couple of months away from having our second, so it was great to have a day just for the two of us. But it also helped set the expectations with work of what it meant for me to both be a dad and work. So that's me. I'm going to start with Alex, your top left of my screen.
Hi, afternoon, everyone. So name's Alex. I've worked for Tesco as a talent partner in our property function. I've worked in the team for just over 3 years now. I've got two young sons, Avery and Harry. One's 3 years and one's 8 months. So just one of my favourite memories. I guess it's just about pre-dad in terms of becoming a dad. Is that the day my son was born, I was actually hosting a event for our whole talent team. And I was in the middle of presenting. I got that call from your wife. I wasn't expecting it, actually, because it was 3 weeks and 2 days early. I'll never forget the moment. Quickly popped outside the door, answered the call, and I came in like a deer in headlights. I think I actually tried to carry on, thinking, "Oh my goodness, I've got to get back home." And luckily, I've got a really supporting and amazing team that were like, "You've got to go now." Pushed me out the door and made me get back home. So I'll never forget those moments. But very internally grateful for those people when I needed them.
I love that, and I love the fact that your team were the ones to be like, "Get going." That's way more important. We need that. Thank you so much, Alex. Greg, I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Greg. I work at Virgin Media O2, and I look after contingent labour. Now, I guess outside of work, I've got two young boys. So not dissimilar to Alex, I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So what I'm finding at the moment is that I'm kind of a part-time wrestling referee on the weekends, trying to separate them both off each other. So that's kind of my busy, hectic weekends. I'd probably say favourite working memory. So I'm very fortunate at Virgin Media O2 to have 14 weeks paternity leave. But probably kind of an unexpected consequence of that, and I wasn't expecting it, was the second child that I had. I probably bonded with the eldest child a lot during that period, because obviously, so mother was looking after the youngest and recovering as well from giving birth. And actually having that time off, that 14 weeks to spend looking after the eldest one, we actually built a really strong relationship. So that was definitely probably my kind of happiest working memory.
No, that's really sweet. I do hope though that you have got your official refereeing credentials. We don't want any unfair bribery going on here.
No, work in progress.
Thank you, Greg. Simon, coming to you.
Cool, thank you, and yeah, love those stories. So I'm Simon. I work for Vodafone. My role is learning and performance business partner. So I look after anything to do with kind of talent, learning, performance, that kind of stuff. I'm a first-time dad of a 4-month-old, so maybe a slightly different place to you guys, which kind of feels like it's been ages because I can't imagine Lila, our baby, not being around, and then you remind yourself, oh, it's only actually been 4.5 months. Favorite memory, one which I suppose can't really count as a memory, is that first like stint that you get when they sleep for over 6 hours in one go. So that's very exciting when you and your wife wake up and go, oh my god, we just had 6 hours. But actually, a few weeks ago we went to Paris for our first trip outside of the UK, and we thought, oh, we'll go around like an art gallery. She's normally pretty quiet, so it'll be fine. So I had her in the sling facing out so she could look around. And she decided that was the time to practice her like squealing and her laughing really loudly. And I was like, this is really cute and really funny. And also not the perfect place, but actually people like responded really nicely to it. And just seeing her kind of, those different emotions that babies start to experience for the first time, it's just, a feeling you can't really describe.
I can't disagree with you more, Simon. I think an art gallery is the perfect place to practice your squealing. Like, no one else is talking. It makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. So today we are talking about that paternity gap, and I think we've already mentioned it a little bit, talking about how long you actually get for paternity leave. For those who aren't aware, statutory paternity leave is still just 2 weeks, and that is 2 weeks at what is possibly the most significant moment of someone's life. All right, we have had lots of different campaigns, from the dad shift to parenting out loud, kind of pushing back, trying to challenge that statutory length, but it feels like progress is still quite slow. So for my panelists, I'd like to ask 2 questions. One, why do we think it's this slow? And 2, what do we think it'll actually take to move the needle? I'm going to go to you first, Greg, this time.
Yeah, so I think on kind of the kind of reason why it's been slow, I think historically paternity leave has been viewed as optional. I think there's been a really big focus on maternity, particularly in kind of the early 2000s, and and that was absolutely brilliant and absolutely right. Whereas I think the paternity leave has just really kind of lagged behind, and I think part of that can sometimes be linked to the society's view of what a man's role is. And I think it's a really weird thing where men are absolutely kind of wanting to be not secondary carers but joint carers. Yeah. But unfortunately there's just that lag behind which has just slowed it, and we're at the stage now that we are where there's a significant number of dads who take 2 weeks or even can't take 2 weeks because statutory pay is only, I think, £194 a month. So I definitely see the reasons for the lag, but it needs to change.
Yeah, and I think that's really, it's really poignant, right? There's still an expectation in society of who's supposed to be that main carer. Simon, coming to you then, what do you think we can do? What can we actually do to change things?
Just build on those points really. I think partly it is actually what's a policy or the provision that organizations have in terms of like how much leave does a man or father or partner get? Is it shared with a partner or not? So I think there's definitely is that provision there. I think the second bit then links to the pay for that for me, because actually if you've got the provision there, but like you say, you can take a wonderful amount of time off, like we've been able to here, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever it is, but actually you can only get statutory pay. For some people, actually, that means even though my organization offers that, actually I can't afford to take it, or our family can't afford to take it. And then I agree with the other point about culturally. I think there's kind of just this view that men take 2 weeks leave and then go back to work. So there's just this view that actually, we're meant to be the ones going back to work. So actually changing that culture and that mindset, I think is really important too.
No, absolutely. Like you say, it's not a single solution. It's very difficult to pin it down to one thing. You can't just have the time if the pay is not making sense. to take that full time. Alex, anything from you? What's your experience been around this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both Greg and Simon. I mean, most households, they kind of rely on dual incomes now. So with dads being more hands-on than ever and younger generations expecting a more equal care of the split there. I mean, fatherhood has historically been framed as secondary in the early months, being a bit more of the supportive but not central character, whereas maternity is kind of seen as that default parental experience. So, but it is, I feel like it is changing, but it's obviously very slow, and that's particularly because historically that's the way it's been, and that's what people are used to, and it takes time for those things to change. And it's only now that we're starting to recognise that kind of dad's involvement now is much more of it's a nice to have. It's great for future generations, and it's all for the better. It's all for the kind of the foundations of family well-being, gender equality, and kind of long-term future for the country, I think, anyway.
Listen, I agree with you. As someone who, I think I used shared parental leave for my first son, and then for the second one, I didn't have access to it because I just joined Balfour's, but I still used. We had additional leave of 4 weeks as default, and I took 2 weeks of annual leave. So I'm going to come to you on this then, because you mentioned already the policy piece and kind of getting that right. Where do you think some organizations are falling short? So where do you think they could do more?
Yeah, I think there's a few bits really. I think the policy is one actually. What I was really surprised about, obviously Vodafone has a great policy, ours is 16 weeks leave, and then when you go back to come back to work after your second, so you take 2 8-week chunks. But after the second chunk, you're able to work 4 days a week, but paid for 5. So again, for me, that will help with my wife's transition back into work. So I definitely think there's a policy component for organizations. I also think, like what's been mentioned already, there's that bit about how the organization makes you feel about taking that leave as well. Again, I've been really lucky that actually people do take the leave. It's seen as standard that you should take it. So I don't have anything to compare it to where people might go, actually, yeah, we've got this policy, but actually people don't really take it. So I think culturally, how do organizations embed that? And I also think not just maybe at the organizational level, but even for us, there's something that you can't replace this moment in time. Like, I'm going to do some other projects. The cynical side, I'm going to create some more PowerPoints. I'm going to, do all of that stuff that we all do, for the next 30, 40 years, whatever it is. Actually, these couple of months, hopefully, will only come around, 2 or 3 times or whatever it is that we decide. And then I think there's definitely, from an organizational point of view, as well as like the policy, pay provisions, the culture, I think there's definitely a leadership component in terms of that role modeling. So actually, if our senior leaders are making sure that they're taking the lead in their role modeling to their teams, I think it totally would change the perception of pat leave and people taking it within organizations.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like you're saying some really controversial things here, Simon. What do you mean you don't remember the PowerPoint presentation that you did 3 months ago? Like, every one of my PowerPoints sticks in my mind. Yeah, that's a really valid point, right? What are our leaders doing? What are they showing as the norm? I think, Alex, you mentioned that it can feel like a nice to have. Do you feel like we need to shift that perception of paternity leave to make it more normal?
Definitely. I think that there is the cultural stigma around dads taking parental leave and kind of making sure that they're providing for their family. But I think with kind of obviously, so Tesco's paternity is 6 weeks full pay, which is amazing, and it kind of supports that. That's the kind of, it matches with the period where your partner would be potentially recovering from a birth, a cesarean recovery, or anything like that, which has a big impact on the family, and being able to kind of support them through that period. I think it's the understanding from kind of leadership where you work, and having kind of the managers, the leadership's confidence that, you know, you're equitable, you're consistent in what you're doing, you're being able to support your family and working hard. So I think, you know, where I work, we're encouraged to talk about kind of our responsibilities, and that culture is there. It's not spread throughout the UK and other areas and things like that. And I think, you know, those challenges are evolving every day.
No, that's, yeah, the challenge of trying to keep up with what work looks like and how it moves as well is quite a big one. Greg, what have you seen at VMO2? Do you get senior leaders talking about their responsibilities at work, or dads being open about it?
Yeah, you do. And I think that's the, you know, when we've talked about the policy versus the culture, I think VMO2 absolutely has the culture right. I was in a leadership team meeting a couple of years ago, I remember, and our managing director of that division at the time was talking about a specific instance where there was an important call put in by the CEO for his exec leadership team, and she had that childcare responsibility at the same time. And she talked about, and I'm sure everyone can appreciate it, you know, that kind of like, oh, you know, I need to attend this, but I've also got my child. And eventually she thought, no, you know, this as a business, you know, we need to set the culture as leaders. And she said, I'm not available. And the CEO was, absolutely brilliant about it straight away. Absolutely, I'll move the call, no problems at all. But I think the fact that she talked about that openly with her senior leadership team and wider leadership team. I know we're talking about paternity here today, but actually, you know, at VMO2, you know, we see parental leave, and we see maternity and paternity being one. And I think that's absolutely vital. And I think it just gives the opportunity for then senior wider leadership team to then ensure that they follow that with their employees, and that goes down throughout the business. So yeah, one example there of really good, strong leadership that then filters through the organization.
I'm gonna stay with you, Greg, because
yeah,
I really like that example that you've given. But I know we hear a lot about fathers not feeling comfortable or feeling safe, kind of making those same calls, because, you know, we've already spoken on this call about how motherhood seems like a default. It's the default that we expect mothers to have to drop work and do childcare. Is there anything we can do to help encourage fathers to feel more safe to do the same thing?
I think I think there's a couple of things. I think, first of all, openness from male leaders. So, and obviously in that example I gave, you know, the MD's SLT were predominantly, or maybe not predominantly, but was a mixture of male and female. So that kind of, you know, transfers down. I think the second thing is also, I think men, sometimes we can be a bit islands at times, and we can all deal with our own pain a little bit in silos. And I think actually one thing that we can all do better is probably communicate across, and, you know, kind of actually when we're working with colleagues, quite often we might go to default conversations, and that might not be about children, for instance, that might be about the football at the weekend and the rugby. And I'm not saying I don't want to have those conversations, but actually sometimes checking on colleagues, you know, and even building support groups, even if it's within your team, you know, to support, you know, working men, I think is absolutely important.
And Simon, kind of same thing for you. Is there anything that you've seen that really stands out as like it's a great example of encouraging men to take that step forward?
I think similar to Greg, really, for me. And kind of, I was reflecting, obviously, before this. I think for me, one of my reflections is there's a part of like the organization and what companies can do, and putting those great provisions in place. And to Greg's point, talking about it, I think I'm one of those annoying dads. It's like, oh, here's a new photo today, like to the rest of the team when I'm in the office. I'm being that person. But actually, I joke. But actually, you know, it's having those conversations, talking about those things that, because this happened yesterday, but because I would say genuinely, like, for me, I think I've learned more in the past 4 months than probably the last 3 or 4 years put together, because just every day is a new experience. So I think embracing that but I think the part I was getting to was, what's the role of the organisation culturally, policy-wise, etc., that they can do. But I think there's also something that like we can do as new parents that have these great provisions as well. And actually, it's taking that leave, enjoying it, embracing it, talking about it, like unashamedly. If anything, I think actually to the point we were making earlier about culturally is it the right thing to do, my organisation accept it, but actually something it's there, take it, enjoy it. You're not going to get this moment back, so I think there's something for us to reflect on, really.
Absolutely. And do not feel guilty about being the dad with the pictures. Like the longer you go, the bigger that folder's going to get. I agree with you on becoming like a paternity leave evangelist after our first, because I'd known nothing about shared parental leave before I took it. I was like, this is phenomenal. This is amazing. Why don't more people take it? And everyone who I found out was expecting after that, I'm like, oh my God, look into this, right? See what your company offers, see if you can take it. It's great. And of course, I'm sure there'll be people online reminding me that shared parental leave isn't really shared, it's more borrowed. And absolutely, we can push back because that's why we want longer paternity leave in the first place. But yeah, becoming that evangelist of how great the time was, the fact that you're not going to get it back, I think is really important for changing that narrative.
Well, I think just on that as well, if I can just add something else, is the also work social channels. I think at VMO2 we had Meta Workplace, and then we had Viva Engage, and I think we've actually built a nice culture, and it's not forced obviously on people, but someone started doing it and more have done it. When people come back from paternity leave, they may share a picture of their child. They'll say, I'm welcome back. Thank you, VMO2, for my paternity leave. And I think it's a really nice message that this is acceptable, and everyone is in agreement that it's the right thing to do.
It's one of my favorite things to do. Is the first thing going in on a new week is bringing up a new photo. Here's my son this week. I'm definitely part of that club. I think that stems from being just being proud. But yeah, I think it definitely, going on your points, kind of seeing leadership talk openly about kind of school runs, sick days, parental leave, and all of those points. I mean, it normalizes that idea. Tesco's has kind of an internal parents and carers network, which is kind of fabulous. It kind of represents the whole idea of it all, and they're an amazing support to like colleagues, and they're easily visible to kind of reach out to and speak with as well.
Nice. I'm really glad you brought that up, because that was going to be my next question around what does like good support look like in our companies. So whether that's supporting dads coming back to work or that day-to-day experience. Alex, staying with you then, tell us more about your parents and carers network.
So we have quite a few networks. I'm actually a disability ambassador for Tesco's, but I have a strong allegiance as well to the Parents and Carers Network, having recently had 2 sons. So, we have a kind of internal comms, which is news and views, where there's stories, shared stories, and kind of support parts and bits and bobs like that, which is really kind of fantastic to see, and seeing kind of leadership involved in that. Kind of gives us all kind of a confidence and makes a tangible difference. And when leaders are modeling it and kind of their teams follow that as well, I think seeing kind of leadership block out times for things like their child's sports day, for example, kind of suddenly makes everyone feel much more comfortable, and it kind of shifts the culture and makes that perspective of parenting not being a disruption, but actually parenting is part of who we are. It's a normal thing, and we're all doing it.
Yeah, I think that is a really nice. Parenting is part of who we are. Like, it's not just an extra label. It's life, and trying to balance life and work is just the reality of where we are now. Simon, coming to you, what's support been like for you coming back very recently?
The support's been brilliant, to be honest with you. I can't be like give any more praise to how the organisation, my team, and leaders have been. I think even from before going on leave, like we've said already, like the normalization of it, like take it, enjoy it, don't worry about what works. Going on, my team being very much like, this is how we're going to distribute responsibilities of what you look after, I think is a really important thing that puts you at ease as well. And then I think the coming back part, again, very similar experience, but similar to what you were saying, Alex, really. I think a lot of it is about the normalization of parenting and kind of the everyday work and everyday things that happen. So yeah, like you say, normalizing the sports days or assemblies or whatever the school runs, the pickups that I think people talk about, or normalizing the, oh, I've just got a call from the nursery, I've got to go and pick, child's ill or something's happened, I've got to go and pick them up and I've got to drop all the meetings this afternoon. I think people talking about that and doing that and being open that that's what they're doing, I think is really, really important. One bit I would just add, so it's just going back a bit, but just a reflection really is, I think the policy around how much leave or pat leave or shared parental leave that you get from an employer brand point of view is incredible, which I hadn't really recognized. Like, when I'm talking to friends or family outside of work and saying, oh, Vodafone offers this 16 weeks, everybody's like, oh my goodness, that's incredible. Because actually, I think most people's experience is 2 weeks. Like if I think of my the group of people we went through NTP with, I think all the partners or husbands were all 2 or 3 weeks. Nobody was more than that. So I think there's a bit of like what our companies are doing is super, super progressive relative to most organizations in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to add there. I mean, I think, if you went on LinkedIn and said, should paternity leave be, kind of higher than 2 weeks, I think 95%, 99% of people would say absolutely. And I think to your point, the enhanced parental leave that obviously you have where you are, where I have, and where Alex is as well at Tesco, I think it signifies something about the business as well. It's a bit broader than just saying, oh, great, 14 weeks paternity leave, I want to go there because I might have a child at some point. It's actually saying as a company, we want to do the right thing by our employees. And I think that's the message it sends.
Alex, did you want to jump in there?
No, it just always makes me laugh in terms of like the older generation. I remember my dad saying, oh, I had 1 day's paternity leave and that was it. And I had to go straight back to work. And now it's okay. We actually are getting somewhere and we're going in the right direction is all I was going to add to what Simon was saying.
No, I've heard those same stories. And what's interesting is when people do recount it, and don't get me wrong, it's hard work, but there's a real level of pride there around doing it. And there's part of me that goes, it's really hard work doing that. Congratulations. There's part of me going, do you see that's wrong and that's not actually right? So I'm glad we're not in those times now.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting, especially because you made the point about LinkedIn and social media. I do think there is more of a split than we maybe realize, because there are still pockets of people going, well, what are dads doing with extra time? Aren't they just going to sit on the couch and, oh wow, couch, how American. Are they going to sit on the sofa, have a beer, sit back, go golfing, use that time as a holiday? And I definitely think more needs to be done to show how involved you end up being, and how I think you mentioned the bonding, that time you get to actually get to know your kids, whether it's the first or multiples, get to know them better because of that time that you have, is incredible. And yeah, I'm sure everyone on this call has a story to tell of someone who's like, well, back in my day, I only had half a second's paternity leave to check the baby with mine, and then I'm off.
Not far off.
Yeah, but let's actually look forward. What does good look like? Right, we've spoken about the less great. What does good look like? Especially beyond the first few weeks, right? We've talked about the actual leave, and that's great. but then you don't stop being a dad once paternity leave ends. So how can we see that flexibility in the care and the support on an ongoing basis? What can organizations build to kind of provide that support and create the narrative that, yeah, we don't expect you, because I think I can't remember who it was who said that parenting is who we are now. Like, we need the flexibility in the culture that enables you to be a parent as well as doing your job. Alex, I'm going to come to you for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of well and good having a policy alone that kind of supports parenthood, but there's also a lot around that. Kind of, there's the returning to work and getting over the dad guilt from leaving your home and your child going, "Daddy, please don't go." It's heartbreaking when those moments happen, but seeing kind of dads celebrating kind of the flexibility in those moments, and actively championing being a father, and kind of having that expectation that, you know, you can dual parent, you can do these things, you can have those confident conversations with leadership teams, with managers, with everyone that you're talking with at work, and they're supportive, they're there. In my team, I've never felt more supported in terms of, you know, I'll go into work and I can ask for advice. My child's teething, what can I do? Like, you know, I wouldn't have found out about teething granules or loads of different things if I didn't have them. You know, I sound like I'm always talking about my son, which in all fairness, I absolutely always am. But it's having those conversations and feeling confident to have them, and knowing that it's not going to kind of undermine me or kind of make me kind of not look like I've got no ambition or anything like that.
Greg, I'm going to jump on Alex's last point there about ambition and how parenthood and taking flexibility can sometimes feel in conflict with like being ambitious and wanting to progress in your career. So what can we do to help people not feel like they're going to be penalized for it?
I think, first of all, people have got to see that being a good father is a good positive attribute, you know, so wanting to do the best by your child, it's, you know, that's a good symbol of someone, you know, in life. And also it's a good symbol of then their leadership, you know, with others, and how they cope with managing teams, how they cope with managing teams. I think, second of all, you probably, just as an individual, and, you know, understand what your company offers in terms of flexibility and policies as well, which I think is really important. I think there's lots of really good policies out there in lots of businesses, actually. I'd say there's really inconsistent levels quite often from the management layer as to knowledge of these being able to support employees. So that's very important as well. And I'd say to anyone, understand what policies exist. But then thirdly, I think you probably naturally, and I don't know if the other panelists would agree with me, I found I've become a lot better with my time. So when you have kids, your time is condensed. And I'd actually say, you know, in terms of getting work done, I've probably not changed. If anything, maybe got slightly better, because I've become a lot more efficient, because I've gone, right, I've got to get this task done because I've got to pick up my child from nursery, bang, get your head down. So I don't think it always works in a, you know, I don't think you don't necessarily lack ambition. You have an extra drive as well, because you've got 2 children at home. So you have that drive there to, you know, really do your best at work and be a positive role model. So I won't get too negative if you're a parent in the future, you know, someone with a child on the way. Don't beat yourself up thinking you can't be ambitious and can't progress. It could just light a bit of a fire under you.
Love that.
I do love that. Simon, as someone who is freshly back, do you have that fire lit?
I would agree on the productivity component, because I suppose maybe before Lila being born, you know, I could be guilty sometimes being like, oh, I can do this in the evening if I'm not productive during the day, or I can do this during the day. And then, you know, Vodafone is very flexible. So sometimes I could be like, oh, I'm going to go for a jog during the day, and it just means I'll work a little bit later, or things like that. Whereas now I'm like, okay, once, you know, 5:30, 6 o'clock comes, that's our transition into for us at the minute, witching hour and loads of feeding and trying to get to sleep, and then getting an hour or so with the wife while the little one's in bed. So yeah, you do have that kind of hard stop now, which maybe didn't exist before. And Alex, you're saying about always asking like your colleagues for advice, or this is happening, that's happening. I was joking with somebody the other day that I feel like I'm co-parenting at the minute with my wife and with Claude or ChatGPT as well. Telling us something like, this is happening. This is normal. But what should we do? So yeah, that's a third part of our relationship now for baby advice.
I fully love that. Mine are 4 and 10 months, and yeah, the amount of Googles where I was just like, is this the right color of poo? Is my baby okay? Yeah, there's been a lot more. There's been a lot more poo related Google searches than there were before the kids. I think I also wanted to add from my experience as well. I was one of those parents who I felt like I had to dampen down my ambition career wise, not because work was making me, but because it wasn't my priority anymore. Like I was just in a place where the most valuable thing for me was spending time with the boys, and if it meant that I didn't take on extra work, or I wasn't always going for that promotion as I was before then, it didn't matter as much. It didn't hit me as much. And I think I wanted to share that for other dads who might be like, yeah, actually, I don't have the same fire for progression. I enjoy my job. I'm doing what I want to do, but the priority for me became the boys and coming home to the family. And I moved jobs a couple of times now since my first was born, and each time the big priority for me when I was talking to them about options and offers was, look, this is what I need. I need to be able to go home and pick up my sons from nursery, or attend this. That's my main ask. And it meant that when I am at work, I'm at work and I'm fully committed. But and there have been times, because I'm working on the Lower Thames crossing, when the Dartford crossing's closed and you have to leave early, I was like, right, 3 o'clock to try to make a 20-minute journey in 3 hours. That's when I had to leave, but they understood, because that's what I needed to do to do the nursery pickup. Before we get too emotional, let's talk to the dads who are hopefully still listening. If you were to go back in time and talk to a dad who is where you are now, what advice would you give to them? I'm going to start with you, Alex.
Well, that's a tough one. If I was to go back in time, initially kind of pre-baby, all pre-babies. So just to say, like, it will be okay. Just be there for your wife. Your work is your work. Your family is the most important thing. You need to take that time and be with your family. Build those bonds. It's the most important time. It's very cliche, but it is genuinely magical. And I was very fortunate that my work very much supported me throughout that time. There was no stigma there, no career consequences. There was clear support there from them, but just take that time, really enjoy it, make the most of it, try and get out the house, do as much as you can to make the most of that time whilst you're out with your family, for sure.
Nice. Greg, coming to you.
So let's say someone's having a baby in 6 months. I mean, I'd probably tell them to get a lot of things in before the baby comes, because life does change. So yeah, do those weekends away maybe that you used to do, play as much sport you can, etc. Because not that you can't still do those things, but you have to be a bit more economical with your time. But I think I'd say don't stress about it as much. I think everyone with their first child kind of goes into a certain level of stress mode. And it's easy to say once you've had the second one, because with the second one, you're not as stressed as maybe you are with the first. The second one's eating food off the floor. You've no idea how long it's been there for, these kind of things. So, but don't stress about it, because sometimes, that stress, particularly in the first 3-4 months, can then cause you maybe not to enjoy it as much as you should. And the truth is, you've got this, beautiful thing that's, that you love, and, that will, be with you for a long time. And you want to look after it. So, I think don't get too stressed, but it's easy to say that yeah.
But I agree with you. A number of times you just see the second and they've got something in their mouth and you're like, that's fine. That's fine.
Exactly.
Simon, how about you? What's your advice?
I'm laughing at that. So last week we were obviously first few months, sterilizing everything, cleaning everything, giving bottles. And last week I turn around, look at the baby, she's on her mat, and she's reaching out to lick the dog. I was like, hang on, you can't lick the dog in his fur. We spent so long stopping anything going near you. I think probably my thoughts, obviously having gone off fairly recently, I think something that was brilliant for us was speaking to people that have gone on similar leave quite recently, and getting their thoughts, their guidance. So, like Alex, Greg, yourself, that's super helpful, I think, to kind of help prep you a little bit. But I also think with that, knowing that what works for each of us might be very different. So even though we all have companies that offer great policies and great leave, actually what flexibility and what leave looks like from a work perspective, but also be very different. So I think there's, I suppose my advice here is do what works for you and your family. I think you kind of get so much advice from so many different people in this scenario, in this time of life, that you just need to be what works for you and your family will be very different to others. But talking to people does mean that you get lots of great hand-me-downs from everyone. So don't think you bought any clothes for 6 months for the baby, because people just we'll bring you all the stuff we've got. They're great, okay. So get the hand-me-downs as well. It's my other bit of advice.
Hand-me-downs for the win. I really like those. As you were speaking, I was like, what would I say that'd be different? I think the big bit of advice for me is ask, push your luck, try your arm. If you're not sure whether you do, whether you do qualify for certain types of leave, ask anyway. Ask and try to combine the different types of leave in different ways as much as you can, because you'd be amazed how much people are like, oh, you know what, we just had never thought of this case before. Absolutely go for it, because that's how we ended up finding out about shared parental leave. When we had our first, my wife was still teaching, and we realized because you can take up to 3 blocks of shared parental leave, we basically had it where our baby was due in September. So my wife waited until the end of the summer holidays to start maternity leave. And then we ended maternity leave, as you have to do to get to shared parental leave, just before the start of the Christmas holidays. So she was paid for the Christmas holidays at full price, went back onto shared parental leave for the next term, and every holiday, basically, she was on parental leave until the summer holiday, where she's paid again full amount. So we were able to stretch that full length of 9 months for a whole year with periods of full pay, not just statutory. And it meant that I was able to take those extra weeks to turn I think I had 4 weeks back when I was at Deloitte. They have now increased it, because I know someone will be like, they've got equal now, 6 months. 4 weeks back when I was there, that turned into 12 weeks. which was just the most incredible time. And it was only because we tried our luck and it happened to work. Yeah, just give it a go. This is a Flexer webinar, so I think we would be remiss if we weren't to talk about what we think employers can be doing differently. We've mentioned already the positive impacts on employer brand of offering more generous leave. Is there anything else you think more companies should be doing? I'm going to come to you, Simon.
I think it's that point you've made, actually, but the majority of companies in the UK don't offer that great leave that we've all got. So that would be the one thing for me. But I think, yeah, that, and also just make it part of your culture, like we've talked about today. Like, actually, if it's part of every day, people are talking about it, actually, I think it will become more embedded across organizations and across the UK. And I think, to the point Alex and Greg both made at the beginning, paternity leave won't then be seen as this thing that fathers take for 2 weeks and then go back to work, because that's the biggest challenge, isn't it? That there's just this assumption that it's fathers that go back to work, and then we don't take on the parental responsibility in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, because I think, kind of large enterprise companies are starting to go a bit more down the route of, enhanced paternity leave. I think small to medium businesses is where it's probably slightly lagging behind. And I understand that, when you've got a very small team, maybe owner-led business, it's very hard to offer something like that, especially in the economic climate that we're in at the moment. I think the one thing that that I'd like to encourage small to medium businesses to do is to say, okay, what output are we getting from that employee when they do come back after 2 weeks? Because I know, particularly after my first child, if someone said to me after 2 weeks, bearing in mind, what your partner or wife has been through at home, and someone said, right, come back into work, deliver as you did before, let's go, my output would be significantly impacted. I'd probably make some really poor decisions in work. Yeah. So I think my ask is for companies to really put the mirror up and go, actually, what are we getting out of employees asking them to come back after 2 weeks?
Nice. I like that. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's knowing and having that culture that you're not asking for special treatment. It's not a huge request. It's making it fair. And it's having allies within the business, knowing other dads, knowing other supportive leaders and kind of partners, and hearing their stories and sharing those stories, because that's what it's all about, sharing those photos, sharing those moments, and kind of building on that, I think is really helpful in helping changing the culture.
No, I really like that. I just before I say my point, I have been asked to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, please do use the chat function, so that we don't completely miss anything and you get to the end, you're like, but I had a question. Yeah, I think that recognition that having a child is life-changing, and it will change your values, it will change your priorities, it will change how you show up. Like you say, I can't imagine, and I know it's a very privileged position to be in, going back to work after 2 weeks, knowing that in that time, both of my boys had basically only just started keeping their eyes open. Like, they've not done much so in terms of childcare and support and recovery needs. That first 2 weeks is more of a support period for my partner and my wife than it was the parental bit. The parental bit really kicked off from that 2 weeks into 6 weeks, into the 12 weeks, because they change so quickly as well. Their needs change. It's really important. And I think the point you made, Greg, about thinking about what the right sized solutions are for your company are important. Yes, not everyone's going to be able to offer 6 months of fully paid parental leave, but it is thinking about what flexibility options are there? Is there a way that we can think about shifting start times or end times, thinking about for people who are maybe on shift-based work, getting ahead of time so that they can plan their days a bit easier. Like, it's not to say that you cut their hours, it's not to say that you make it more difficult for them to work, but there could be a massive difference in experience in knowing that you're only going to be in after 12 o'clock for a full week, so you know you can get involved in nursery drop-offs, or you know you can have more of a morning with the kids, or you start slightly earlier, so that means you can have an earlier evening and you can get back to spend time with the family. So yeah, I think to kind of gather all of your inputs, the leave is important, being more adventurous and looking at what you can do, but also being intentional. Don't just give up at leave. How do we look at what the broader possibilities could be? A question for me then on the experience at home. So not just looking at the partners, but when you are on the brink of going back to work, what are some of the conversations you think were helpful or would have been helpful for you and your partners before you went back to work, in terms of how you split the care or what the day will look like? I'll start with you, Greg.
Yeah, I think the key is to be really deliberate and have kind of deliberate conversations at that point. I think sometimes, you're kind of, there's a bit of nervousness around you going back to work and everything else, and you kind of pussyfoot around a bit. I think the key for me is to understand what policies exist in your current work. So I'll give you an example. For instance, we have 5 days dependence leave a year, which is for, if a child's off sick, it's still paid leave, etc. So when you bucket it all together and you understand what your partner has and she understands what you have, then you can kind of go, right, and these are the nursery hours we've got, or these are the nursery hours we're looking, how can we make this work? And also, what support do you have externally? And look, we don't have parents who are close by, but obviously, parents close by, you can then factor that in as well. And I think off that, you can start, you have a basis for when you go into going back into work, and it's a basis to have like an ongoing conversation from.
Nice. Alex, coming to you then. What's your nugget of wisdom?
Yeah, I think the first bit is these conversations are seriously important. You need them to kind of structure your life, otherwise it will be a total mess. I mean, I think the conversations you need to be having is like, how are you going to share that mental load? Because it's overwhelming. How are you going to be able to support and kind of protect each other's time? So, like, for instance, if you play football at the weekend or play badminton in the evenings, or and your wife likes to go out with her friends or have a social time somewhere else, how are you going to make sure that they protect and we each have our own time and have our own time together as well? So what is fair and what does that look like now rather than what was traditional? Like, how are you going to make that work? And little things as well, like appointments. Who's going to be going to these appointments? Can you both go to these appointments? And things like that. How to be the most supportive you can be and work together, I think is a seriously important conversation to be had.
I'm slightly annoyed at you, Alex, because that was my advice, and now I have to come up with another one. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's so easy to get fully absorbed in parenthood, and you forget what it's like to be you or be partners, and it is very important to be intentional about that. So great advice. I would have given it myself. Simon, go for it.
The only build I would add on to what you both said already, Greg and Alex, I think is it changes all of the time as well. So if I think we're ready for me and my wife and our conversations, obviously what was working for us in that first 2 months of leave for me is very different to what's working now I'm back at work, and that's going to be different again. Probably next big milestone will be when my wife goes back to work, or even when the baby goes into nursery. So I think just continuously having those conversations as well is super important. And Greg reminded me as well, so maybe if this is one nugget for somebody expecting a child to take away, have the nursery conversation early.
Yeah.
So what I learned is when we were 12 weeks, when my wife was 12 weeks pregnant, was a point we had to start looking for nurseries for her to start at when she was like 1, which somebody gave me that advice, and I was like, that is crazy. How do we need to start looking before we know when she, her date of birth, her name, anything like that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a conversation to have early.
I fully agree. Nursery wait lists are an experience. What would my new one be? I think my new one would be to check in on each other's mental health as well. I think it's easy to look at it from the perspective of, because we know what postnatal depression rates can be like in mothers, but also for fathers. Going back to work, while we can kind of oversimplify it into just a shift of mode and going back into work mode, there can be an emotional impact, and quite a strong emotional impact, in essentially having to break that moment where you've been fully embedded with your child or children, and having to move into that world where maybe you don't feel like you've had enough time or whatever. And I think checking in on each other and just making sure you know where you're each at is super important, super valuable. I'm looking at our time and we are so close to the end. I want to say a massive thank you to Alex, Greg, and Simon for their wonderful insights, the great humor, and being such great company. Thank you, fellas.
Right, thanks.
Thanks. You're welcome.
And I
Thank you, guys.
cannot end this webinar without reminding you that Flexer is a platform for you to go and check which companies are offering these incredible parental leave options. It is one of the fantastic perks of their platform that you can go in and check not just parental leave, but other options for flexibility that suit what you need for your life. So do check out Flexer as soon as you leave here, because we're having a great time. You don't want to go that early. But in the name of flexibility, it's 3 minutes before the next meeting. So go get a drink. It's quite warm. Maybe a coffee if you need it. Just stretch your legs. And hopefully you have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Thanks for joining us. And thanks again, Alex, Greg, and Simon. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.